Dave Meggyesy, number 60, a 6-year veteran, started for the first time this season and played the right linebacker spot with considerable skill. His fine speed enabled him to drop back with the receiver or come up quickly to make the tackle, and his pass coverage was excellent.
In the late 1960s, the game was played against a backdrop of conflict at home and war in Vietnam, a time when Dave Meggyesy took a personal stand that ultimately cost him his job.
It really came down to, in my last year in 1969, was when I was the best linebacker on the team, and I was benched because of my anti-war activities.
Sport in the 1960s was going through the same transition as society. It was also a time of tremendous change in terms of the way that we viewed ourselves.
Things were breaking open. People were questioning a lot of things. I mean, it was the civil rights movement, it was the anti-war movement, it was the women's movement, it was a whole lot of things were breaking open that people were questioning how things were being done in the country.
School was being challenged by the students. Authority in the workplace was being challenged by the workers. Authority in sports was being challenged by the athletes.
I wanted somewhere in me to initiate positive changes in the game, to make the game, if you will, a better game for people who followed me.
He was unhappy with how the game was, the establishment was running the game, and he loves the game itself. It gave him great opportunity throughout his life to put him through school. It gave him opportunities as an adult that he would not have had otherwise, and it gave him a voice.
At the peak of his career, Meggyesy chose to quit the game and write a book, denouncing the power and structure of the NFL.
He assaulted an institution, and nobody else had ever done it. People were totally up in arms about it. They thought that he was going to bring down the game and that he was part of some communist conspiracy.
Most of us on the team then really preferred more to concentrate on the football rather than the activities outside. It caused a distraction on our football team, and one that a lot of us didn't appreciate.
A lot of guys had read the book, and a lot of guys knew about it, and I think the effect was that it generally raised consciousness, if you will, about the system, had a lot of injustice in it and could be changed.
Welcome to Good Seats Still Available, a curious little podcast devoted to exploring what used to be in professional sports. Here's your host, Tim Hanlon.
Hey now, how is it going, everybody? Your pal Tim reporting for duty. It's Good Seats Still Available. Yes, of course. The curious little podcast that is devoted to what used to be in the realm, in the pantheon of professional sports. Thanks for coming on by. We greatly appreciate it. The tone is set with that little clip there from NFL Films. We couldn't figure out exactly when it originally aired and ran. We think it was sort of in the late 70s or so. Not quite sure. But our guest this week is a fascinating guy. The name is Dave Meggyesy, and if that is vaguely familiar to you, you should probably remember the fact that Dave was not only an exceptional linebacker for the St. Louis Cardinals of the NFL, the St. Louis version of the football Cardinals, obviously now domiciled in Arizona and previously domiciled, as we had with in our conversation with Joe Ziemba a number of years back about in Chicago, the Chicago Cardinals. Well, by the 1960s, they were in St. Louis, and ostensibly that was sort of the reason for reaching out to Dave to have a conversation, because we really haven't talked about the St. Louis version of the Cardinals. Busch Stadium and that really hard turf, and some interesting years having moved from Chicago, largely mediocrity, I would argue. The St. Louis version of the Cardinals were. etc. But, when you further understand the much deeper story of Dave Meggyesy, it is intriguing to no end. And you football historians may know then of Dave's legacy for not only his play on the field, but frankly, the bombshell of a book that he produced in 1970 called Out of Their League that really shook up the NFL, and from which he abruptly left the NFL and the Cardinals. He essentially walked away from a very promising and very successful football career in the NFL because he was an outspoken cat. You call him a free spirit. You want to call him the thinking man's player. He was that then, and he still is now. And that's why you're going to find this conversation just extraordinarily interesting, as I did. The book called Out of Their League is another, frankly, in sort of the top sports books of all time. And we had the pleasure of talking to Pat Jordan, the author of one of those other ones, A False Spring. Completely a different set of circumstances and topic. But when this book, Out of Their League, came out in 1970, it was literally and figuratively, I guess, a bombshell, a groundbreaking book on the realities of professional football. It was essentially the first of its kind to really kind of deal with sort of the serious, hardcore issues that are, frankly, still around today in today's NFL and professional football racket. If you will, some startup leagues that, continue to sort of press on and continue the sort of issues that still plague professional football and, frankly, more broadly, professional sports and sports generally. Racism, for sure. A lot of sort of comparisons of Dave's story and plight to that of Colin Kaepernick and some of the other still very evident issues about racism in sports of all kinds. Militarism and the corrosion, I guess, of thinking as it relates to football, it being obviously a very gridiron based and 3 yards in a cloud of dust and very militarily sort of oriented kind of dynamic and stuff, and the health of that sort of dynamic. Injuries, playing through pain and the like. Frankly, things that are still playing out today with CTE. Which a whole generation or two, frankly, of players are now dealing with the violence of the sport. Drug use, both recreationally, if you will, as well as the use of painkillers to kind of deaden and prolong one's career, perhaps to the detriment of one's body. I mean, all these issues and more were sort of part of, it was the first time they were really sort of publicly delineated and focused in book form. There's a great clip there on YouTube from the Dick Cavett show that Dave was on, featuring none other than Gloria Swanson and Janis Joplin on the guest couch there from August 3rd, 1970. You'll hear a clip of that in the middle of our conversation later on with Dave. But it's worth a find on YouTube because you really get a sense of sort of Dave's consciousness, shall we say, of all these issues. That, of course, around the backdrop of the late 1960s, which was just gigantically chaotic in this country's history with the Vietnam War and civil rights and all kinds of stuff, right? 1968, a powder keg of a year, and assassinations. And I mean, these are sort of things that have really never healed and have just, in many respects have still festered for many years. Dave was hip to all that stuff. And, this is a story of a guy who, is part of the football machinery and doing pretty damn well with it, by the way, but just couldn't let his conscience sort of let it lie there and kind of spoke out and saw things that he felt needed to be said and, effectively paid the price for it. I think consciously, by the way, in his professional career. But this is setting the tone because it's so much more complex and interesting and frankly, revelatory because the more you hear our conversation with Dave Meggyesy coming up in a few minutes, the more you will recognize that the issues that we're talking about from then are still very pronounced, just in different forms today. And that's why I think you're going to enjoy this chat to no end. Our conversation with the former St. Louis football NFL linebacker extraordinaire, and shall we call him the thinking man's player and football conscience, shall we say. Dave Meggyesy, the author of the seminal book from 1970, Out of Their League, coming up in a few moments' time. Thank you for sticking around for that. You're going to enjoy it. And let's say a quick thanks to one of our great sponsors this week. How about Royal Retros? I got to get this new name straight. It's not new to them, but to me, it's still... I know them as 503 Sports, which is now a sub-brand, but RoyalRetros.com. RoyalRetros.com our pal Dustin Alameda in Portland, Oregon. The king of throwbacks, 503 Sports is their sub-brand. It's their sort of a unique labeling for all kinds of great, not only shirts, but custom-made jerseys from all kinds of teams and leagues of the past. I encourage you to try them out at royalretros.com. And you're going to find all kinds of great leagues and teams memorialized in one-of-a-kind, custom-made. You put your name on the back of them, the numbers and stuff. Those jerseys are works of art, and they're worth checking out. They're worth buying in volume. And, of course, when you do so, you want to check out adding to your checkout the promo code for you there, SEATS, S-E-A-T-S, SEATS, promo code at royalretros.com. Again, promo code SEATS for 10% off all of your purchases. It's the king of throwbacks, royalretros.com. Thank you, Dustin and friends, for your continued sponsorship of the show. All right, let's get into it. It's a fascinating, a really intriguing discussion. We were honored to have a great discussion just a couple of weeks back with the great Dave Meggyesy. Please sit down, buckle up, and please enjoy. You had a 7-year or 8-year career with one team, the St. Louis Cardinals of the 1960s. How did you get to the Cardinals in the first place? You played college in Syracuse, right?
I did. I went to a small school in Ohio called Solon High School, and I had 52 kids in the class, and there were high school players. I can tell their names: Roger Davis and Mark Weber, and went to Syracuse. And Ben Schwartzwalder was the coach, and it was a really good team. And so I was the third from my high school to go to Syracuse. And back then we had 27 rookies or freshmen on the team. And so basically, and then my freshman year, we were national champions in 1959 and beat Texas in the national championship game. And so as a sophomore, I was a starter. I was actually a pretty good player. And so what I say is I was a starter on a national champion team, Syracuse University. And then Mike Ditka actually, he was played at Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh beat us. And so anyhow, I played pretty well, and then I was drafted on the 17th round, by the St. Louis Cardinals, and at that time they would draft anybody really who could play.
Oh, now don't sell yourself too short.
So basically that's what happened. I was drafted by the St. Louis Cardinals, and I went there. I wanted to go on to see, what it would be to be in the NFL and all that kind of thing. And I was not a big rabid football player as such, because I was into other things, my academics and social stuff and all the stuff that was going on. And back then, things were starting to emerge in civil rights, and definitely, and then a little down the line, when the Vietnam War started, and I got involved with the anti-war movement, which I was doing as a player at the St. Louis Cardinals. So I was, for me, I had 7 years, and then I quit basically, and there's a whole story about how I was basically benched because of my anti-war activities. I had 34 of my fellow players, the Cardinals, to sign a letter telling our congressional delegation to stop the Vietnam War. And back then, I mean, there were a lot of young guys just my age were being killed. I mean, 50,000 people, guys, who were killed in that war, by the way, U.S.
Yeah, and the consciousness of that around that time. I'm actually watching the 4-part CNN documentary on LBJ as we record this, and the tides. It's the history is fairly well known now, but the tide was certainly changing, and especially at the younger levels, the collegiate level as well.
Oh, at levels, it was amazing.
Yeah, they were sort of on more to the dynamic, I think, more than the sort of established status quo.
Well, we called it the movement, basically, and a lot of people jumped in. Of course, at Kent State, and 4 people were murdered, basically, by the military, and Martin Luther King was assassinated, and so at that. What I have said many times, 1968 was a big pivotal year in the country, and certainly in myself as well. And as being just one of those younger people, I was 26 years old, a little older, but there were a lot of, kids or us were in many student newspapers, and the anti-Vietnam War movement was huge. And LBJ, basically, he has said that the movement basically forced him to leave, and because he realized that people didn't want to be involved with this war anymore, and it was driven by a lot of students and younger people worldwide, not only just in the United States, but in Europe, definitely. People have to look at it when you really look at the history.
Well, let's step back for a second, because there's a lot to unpack there. I want to particularly.
Yes, there is.
No, this is great. No, but I want to get into your frame of mind, right? So, the fact that you're going to college into the pros, at least you had probably some semblance. I doubt it was a surprise on draft day that you had something enough to take it to the next level, to the NFL, right?
I had no idea. Frankly, I was living in married student housing. It was a Quonset hut with my wife and my new baby. And I get this call at, literally 2 a.m. This guy is named Chuck Drulis. And who are you? And he basically said, "We drafted you." I said, "Who the hell are you?" Number one. And he said, "St. Louis." I said, What the hell? Where is St. Louis? I didn't know anything about.
Well, and look, it's also
St. Louis Cardinals.
remember too, this is only the 3rd year that the Cardinals were
exactly. Well, they moved from Chicago down to St. Louis. I said, "Who the hell are?" And I watched in high school some NFL games, and but I didn't know who the hell St. Louis Cardinals. Who are they? Kind of thing. Is it a team or something? New team or something? So anyway, he said, "Well, you're drafted," and I said, "Okay." And so we communicated, and then I went out to the East-West Shrine game in San Francisco, and we went to St. Louis, and that's what happened. I Chuck pushed me on to, okay, you need a contract. And so I said, okay. And so I signed a contract. I went to San Francisco and went to the game as a player, had a good game. And my wife finally said, you were so dumb about signing before the game because you had a really great game. You should have signed afterward. You could have got more money. So she was a lot smarter things than me. So basically that's what happened. And then I went to training camp in your hometown now in Lake Forest, and where the Bidwell's Stormy Bidwell had a house, and we went to Lake Forest College where our training camp was. So that's how so it's a nice little piece of synchronicity that you and I are talking. So anyhow.
So let's before we get into the other part of it, I'm just curious as to sort of the state of play. How did you enjoy your time? You started in the latter years. You had some fairly decent teams, including here's an interesting historical asterisk: a 1964 season where you won the playoff bowl, the Bert Bell playoff bowl, which was a thing back then. Was essentially third place for the two losing teams in the semis stayed to the NFL championship.
We beat Green Bay.
That's right. What was that like? I mean, you're playing in on the fuzzy concrete there of Busch Stadium there.
Busch, exactly.
How did you enjoy being
with green dye?
And how did you enjoy? And I think I can sort of get a sense of this being literally in the middle of the country, so to speak, where I would imagine it was a little bit.
I wouldn't say. Well, there's so much about that. You know what I mean? As an athlete, you want to get. You have to succeed. You know what I mean? And to so. I was a college lineman. I was light. I when I finished, I was 215. And when I went into the pros, the Cardinals, I think it was my first year was like 217. So I was light then, but not so light because there were our linebackers were about 220-ish kind of thing. And of course, I'm much bigger now. And I had speed and quickness, and I was strong. I could really hit. And so I made the team on my ability to be fast, quickness, and I could hit. And so I was a very good special teams player my first 2 years, and more or less. And then the veteran guys were leaving, and then I was coming in to play more. I had this stroke thing happen. So anyhow, scrimmage, yeah. So yeah, and then I was good, and then I started my 5 years, and I was a starter, and I was a pretty good player, and so basically that's what had happened, and then in the off season I was doing a lot of other stuff, working in the medical stuff. I wanted to be a doctor, and then I got into anti-war with the civil rights movement and
you were going to school at Wash U, right, too?
And I was going to school, sociology at Washington University. And so I was doing that. So I was just doing, stuff. But back then we had an off season, and then we had a in season kind of thing. So it's not like anymore guys have to basically kind of be in shape and keep it going year round. But back then it was a different situation.
Well,
so,
but I also think
back then. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I'm wondering. I can't. It seems to me that you're already evidencing a multi-dimensional approach to life.
Yeah, no, I realized I was not a big. I really was a good football player, but football was not my life. I realized I wanted to get on to other stuff. I didn't know what to do, but and the money was good, and so I went to grad school. I did this, I did that, and worked at different places, different situations, and in the off season. So it was. I realized, many guys realized too, we didn't have. There was not a lot of money then, and so I used to say when at the just before training camp, we're broke. I'm broke. My family's broke. I have no money. And so I have to make the team and, get paid. So, and back then, we had 6, they call it exhibition games, paying us $50 a game. $50.
Wow.
And I remember
not 4, 6.
For 6, preseason games, exhibition. They call it exhibition games, And then we'd go to different places like Richmond, Virginia. I remember going over there, and Knoxville, and we went, I think, to Knoxville or someplace like
Charlotte.
It'd be all these, and then we played in Baton Rouge, and Jerry Stovall was in my class, and he was a Heisman winner, and there were 72,000 people at LSU, and all were sitting on the line, and it's hotter than hell, even it was in the evening, and all of us looking, we're getting paid $50, for this game, and we're, it was crazy.
Was that your first enlightenment, or just one of many?
Well, but it was, the enlightenment. People realize, because back then, my view was I could play for free, and many players, athletes, want to do it for free, quote, because that's what you want to do, because that's what you're into, So the money was not a big issue. But when you get older, when you got a little bit older, to figure out, okay, what is going on here? When you figured out stuff, who are these owners? What is this neo-slavery with the players? There was no free agency. They grabbed you and grafted you, and you stay there until you leave. I'd say, if you want to be free, go to Canada. They had you by the balls, as they would, as he said. Okay, and our contracts were always, if you played out your contract, you took a 10% cut of the last year of the contract. So that was a disincentive for any player to free. Pat Fisher did it. And then he went from the Cardinals to the Redskins. Good player. And so when you look at the history of the struggle of the players, and there's a history about that, about how we had to go through the process of winning the war, basically, in 1993. And I was involved with that because I was a union guy. I was the Western director of the NFLPA. So when we won the war in 1993, so, and the baseball players, guys had to do it, the NBA, so that's what happened, basically. So that, in the situation, of course, the college kids now, finally, it got opened up the last 2 years where guys can actually move, right?
Yeah. In part of preparation for this conversation, I, of course, dutifully went to your appearance on the Dick Cavett show in 1970, just before your book Out of Their League came out. And
that was a trip.
you had a little bit more hair then, let's put it that way. And
exactly. That's
among
true.
other things, yeah. But I was I wasn't surprised, but it was still hard not to be stunned by just how clairvoyant you were 52 years back around lots of different issues, including what you just brought up, that of the NCAA and name and image and likeness finally getting quote unquote.
Oh, exactly. Finally, and they had them by the balls.
When you were at Syracuse, now that's a good college for, obviously for football because of all the guys that have come out of it.
Yeah, outlaw school.
What?
It's an outlaw school.
What does that mean?
Well, there are certain schools that make pretenses of their ball players having academic credentials, and Syracuse isn't one of them.
It's not.
The function up there is you go there to play football, and it was really interesting because, if you contrast like a Ben Schwartzwalder versus a Bud Wilkinson is going to teach you all these values. He's going to say, look, you've got to be humble, contrite, polite, clean cut, the whole trip, and stay out of bars and away from loose women. But Schwartzwalder, if you produced, you could do any damn thing you pleased. And
which of those guys is right?
Well, I think that given the nature of football, I think Schwartzwalder is, and given the nature of what college football does to the individual players, one of the most exploited minorities in the country, are college football players. They get paid approximately 25 cents an hour.
A few others.
Yeah, well, no, obviously true, Janice, but I'm just saying is that a guy earns, you say, the argument is that we're giving these guys a college education. All right, out of my class at Syracuse, one guy graduated. Okay,
out of your that kind of trip among the football players.
Yeah, other football players. Out of my class, one guy graduated.
Do they really do all their classwork?
Well,
do they?
I had a brother once who he was a hell of a football player. My brother Dennis, and he needed some grades. So he signed up for these courses in summer school, and he went back to Cleveland and worked, and came back, and he had him in 6 units of A's. So that's the kind of.
Wait a minute, what was wrong?
Somebody else took the class.
Well, no, they just filled him in on the records,
Oh, I see.
Right, keep him eligible. You have to maintain your eligibility, which is the C average for approximately 15 hours at Syracuse. So this is in one sense the reason for the book is to really talk about this reality. I think most people who really dig football think it's pure American, young Americans out there doing their thing, and reflects all these positive values of society. And on the contrary, I think it reflects more the values that we want to de-emphasize. And I say we of the counterculture, as Rozak has defined, people of the movement, and so on.
I'd say you talk about slavery. What? If you want to play, no. I mean, there's no money. There was no money, no real money. I mean, they and I'd say your college scholarship is just it's a wash basically. If you had you had 20,000 students and you had an extra 50 football players, is that going to make a big difference for the administration? Do they have to hire newer, more professors and people like that? No. The money-making entity in, say, Ohio State is the athletic department, and particularly the revenue sports, football and basketball. Okay, that are funding the situation. So it's so when you really look at what's going on a little bit more, that's what you see. And now we're finally breaking it out because of the court decisions that has allowed the college kids to basically have some money or something. Why are 17-year-old tennis players, they're not getting paid, and football players and basketball players can't do that? For example.
Well, look, you also. I mean, you mentioned it before. You're tapping into not just the collegiate thing and the pro thing, but also once players got to the pro leagues, pro league at least, there was, there is that sort of feeling of, I just want to play, right? And
exactly. No, really, it's really true. It's really true.
To today, right? You've got all these.
It's almost like a spiritual or psychological kind of man. And you want to, and if you're good, you want to play, and because you want to play with the best.
But it does sound like, though, that is ripe for being taken advantage of, and
totally, you got it.
Look at the new USFL coming up, right, in the spring, or the XFL again, right? I mean, these are not going to be great wages or great promises of stardom or payment, so to speak, right? But in some respects, it almost takes advantage of players who want that one last shot. Right, even though they know, or frankly,
or just to do it. You know what I mean? For me, at Syracuse, because I was doing other things. Then I said, well, what do I want to do? I don't know. I don't really know, but it would be nice to do a shot at the NFL. And to take it to the next level. To really see, am I good enough, kind of thing. And, am I a good player, that kind of thing. And when I went to the Shrine game, we had a lot of, college kids too. Kermit Alexander, for example, and he was a colleague of mine with the Union, he was a great player. So those all-star games, when you start rubbing your shoulders with fellow college guys, they're just guys, and all of us wanted to jump to the higher level to see how good, we want to play, that kind of thing. It's like playing the piano, right?
Yeah, and I think, though, that you also had
or musician, and you want to get better and better, you know what I mean, or a writer, you that's what you want to do. That's your creative stuff, and that's what you want to do. You just want to, how you take it as far as you can, or you want to, you know what I mean?
So you're aware,
and I have to
go
ahead.
No, your awareness, right, of that issue for one, but was sort of met with a whole bunch of other things too. It's almost like you came to some level of consciousness as your playing years in the NFL sort of played out. I mean, I go back again to that Dick Cavett interview, and you bring up issues that are still as raw and unsolved as they were in 1970 when you were on the show. Racism, right, injuries, and the painkillers, and you fast forward to things like CTE, which is only now becoming more fully understood.
Exactly.
And of course the glorification of violence, right, and
absolutely. I call it our football is our American war game. I mean, that's what it is.
So mix that stuff up with your consciousness and your activism, let's call it that, around what was going on societally with the war effort and the distaste for it. I got to think you had a lot to think about and or deal with to kind of continue in good conscience to continue to play in the NFL without sort of, I don't know, conscientiously objecting, so to speak.
Well, I think in life, I don't know, Tim, sometimes is when you think about it, I mean, when you look back, you could say, well, I did with that or that kind of thing. But situations present itself, kind of thing. So I was not that conflicted. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do. I thought it was right to do this versus that. Do you see what I'm saying? And so when I put together the petition for my fellow teammates, the Cardinal teammates, the letter that I sent to the congressional delegation in Missouri, saying, we need to stop this Vietnam War, and that was part of the anti-war movement, anti-war movement office was in my house. You know, I had made a little money. We had a bigger house. And so I put the office in the third floor of my house. And so, but I didn't see it as any big deal. You know what I mean? We were all in the movement. We were doing it to try and, you know, make a change in a positive way, because we realized, and I had guys coming through they back then we called the draft dodgers, you know, to go into Canada. A couple of guys came through my house on their way to Canada. You know, Dr. Spock was involved with that, and I met Spock, and he sat at my living room, you know, and he was part of the anti-war movement, because a lot of the kids, you know, or young people, they didn't want to, you know, get drafted and go to Vietnam and get killed. No, they wanted to go to Canada. And so Muhammad Ali, for example, okay. So during that time, that was happening, you know, and of course Ali, you know his story. So and it cost him a big chunk, you know. So that's what was going on at the times, when we have to really look at the history of our time. Our biographies are always set into the historical times that are happening.
How did your teammates, your coaches, the team management, the league sort of take to this thinking? Because you had to think, at least in the back of your head, that speaking out on
all right, I'll tell you what happened. So I was involved, and so my coach, Chuck Drulis, that I mentioned before, he had, Dave, you got to come out to my house. So it was like, you know, 10 at night. So I drive out to his house, and he said, look, I'm going to tell you something. You know, if you don't cease the anti-war activities that you're doing, you will be cut. I said, what? I said, look, this is my stuff. It's nothing about football. He said, no. He said, I just talked to Stormy Bidwell, the owner of the team, and he said, Stormy talked to Chuck, of course, and Chuck, you know, he's the messenger, saying, Meggyesy, you're out of here unless you stop doing this anti-war stuff. So what happened, I talked to my advisor, Irving Lewis Horowitz, who was a sociologist, and we were friends, and I said, what the hell is going on? And Irving was an amazing guy. He was a street kid from New York City, and tougher than nails. And he said, we're going to deal with this. So I wrote a letter, and I sent it basically to the ownership of the Cardinals to say, bottom line, if you're going to fuck with me, I'm going to fuck with you. Because the context was so many young people were against the war, and the Cardinals did not want involved with me as I went anti-war person and have a big public thing happen. And so they basically stepped back. And then they got me the next year, basically. Because I continued. That's when I did my letter, and they finally said, okay, you're out of here. So basically, but I wasn't doing it for any reason than just doing it, because that's what we were doing at then. Do you see what I'm saying? And when I had 34 guys, my teammates, signed the letter, This was not just two guys. This was a team. I think at that, I think we were seven. I think we had like, you know, maybe 40 players on the team, including a cab squad. So it wasn't that, you know, that I was in such huge exception. You know, I went to every guy's house, a room in Lake Forest. I went around and said, "Here's the letter. You guys want to? Do you want to sign it?" They read it. Yeah, I'll write it. I'll sign it. Because they're just like me. A lot of the guys knew what is, you know, fellow, you know, people, you know, were maybe friends who were in fucking Vietnam.
Did any of the teammates?
You know what I mean?
Did any of the teammates face any retribution as well for signing?
No. I told them. I said, look, it's nothing about. It's not. What happened is, I said, look, this is not going to be public. Okay. Private. And then one of the guys, a citizen, basically he got wind of it. And Joe, what's his name? He was the publishing guy. And this is the whole story. And he got a hold of the letter. I don't know how it happened. And so Stormy Bidbill, I'm literally in my football togs going to play to practice. Stormy is screaming at me, "You go right now, go to this office of this guy and get that letter." Because Joe Pollack, who is a publishing guy, sent this out to, sent it to Stormy initially. Okay? Because this guy wanted to make it public. And I told the guys, it's not about publicity. I mean, it's going to be done privately. Okay? So literally, I had to get out of the locker room, got in a cab, okay, took my shoulder pads off, my pants and all the rest, and I'm still in football togs, went over to the thing, got the letter, came back. And I told to Joe, I said, look, you know, I got the letter. And so Stormy was happy that, you know, because it would be an embarrassment for the Cardinal organization. Okay. Oh, wow. Look, 34 Cardinal players, you know, are anti-war guys sending a letter. What? So 2 weeks later, I'm benched. Okay. That's how it happened. And so, and I was really pissed because I was a really good player and, you know, cost me some money, you know, because the bonus thing, because of the number of plays and all that kind of stuff, the rigging the contract. So it was devastating because as you're an athlete, it's all about doing what you want to do as an athlete. Anti-war stuff. So you imagine so many about black athletes getting screwed just because they're black. Okay? And I can give you the sociological stuff because I did all the study in Canton, Ohio. I went to the Hall of Fame and I pulled out for 3 days the pictures and everything and the names, every player for the previous, 20 years. And you could see how many black players on every team, except for Washington, which was the racist, there were the racist teams. And then Ernie Davis, my teammate at Syracuse, was drafted. And then, of course, there was a trade for Ernie to come to Cleveland, and Bobby Mitchell went to Washington. He was the first black player in Washington Redskin history. Okay, and then of course Ernie died, with the Hodgkin stuff. So that was that story too. So when I pulled, because I was a sociology graduate student, so I pulled all the information and I put it all together and I sent it to Jack Olson, who did the 5 or 6 part thing about racism in the NFL. And I gave him all that information. I said, take a look at it. This is what's going on. So every team had a quota. Literally, it was like a graft. It was a graft. That was 1, then 2, then 3, and 3, and then, I think there were like 10. Every team. It was almost. Is this coincidental? What? So when you see this, and then and of course when you're in the middle of the movement and seeing what's going on, and you have some sense of the civil rights movement, what the fuck is going on? And see my teammates, who are black, being cut because they're black and better players.
Yeah, I mean the parallels of your pro career and that of from a civil rights perspective as well as the war,
yes, it was
anti-war.
Ed McQuarters, who was this incredible player, University of Oklahoma. He was a kick-ass motherfucker, but he didn't take any shit from the coaches. And then they finally cut him, and he went to Canada for 12 years or something. You know what I mean? It was crazy. And I got to know him a little bit, and it wasn't talk that much. We would just start. I really liked him because he was a hell of a good player, and he was a kick-ass guy. He and I played similar in a similar way, kind of thing. We were hitters, and we had speed and quickness, and so I liked him a lot, And when he spoke, I said, "Oh wow, he's a dude, this guy," So and then they cut him. He had to go to Canada. And how many really good black players had to leave to Canada or just leave the NFL or professional football? So that was another part of it.
Well, and you throw in the draft of the war too, right? I mean, this is double reasons, right? Strange.
Fuck yeah! How many guys were black guys were drafted? No, here you go, Vietnam on your way, boy. No.
All right, what's this? LinkedIn Jobs. Hey. These days, it can be hard to find and hire the right candidates for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs made it easier to find the people that you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 770 million people. My goodness. Focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience and use screening questions to get your role in front of only the most qualified. Then use the simple tools on LinkedIn Jobs to quickly filter and prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. Yes, it's no surprise, friends, that LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. Of course. Well, did you know that every week that nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Come on. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/goodseats. That's linkedin.com/goodseats to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And now back to our conversation. Take me down then to after being unceremoniously cut. Take me to 1970 and the idea around this book, which It's interesting when it came out and why it came out, right? It was also around the time that, at least on baseball, you had two other pretty sizably notable books. A False Spring by our guest just last week, Pat Jordan, about his sort of travails as a minor league player with the Milwaukee Braves. But, of course, Foul Ball by Jim Bouton, which was more of a, I guess, baseball version of somewhat of an expose.
I call it the kiss and tell book, but my book was really the first book that really talked about the larger issues in society and sports organizations and the NFL and when you even with the Major League Baseball, I mean, they had the big struggle happened in the 1890s, and then they clamped it down, and then it didn't. Of course, when it happened with I'm talking to the guy, the late Union guy. What's his name?
Donald Fear? Oh,
no. Before, he was the guy basically drove.
Kurt Flood.
No. Well, a Flood did it, but then it was the Union guy who put together the organization to basically and to win the lawsuit. Okay, that opened up free agency and
Marvin Miller.
Yeah, Marvin Miller. Yeah,
all
Marvin,
three, by the way, very important in the entirety of that. But at least I got to him.
Yeah, no, it's a hell of a book, and this guy Chuck Core. I don't know if you know about his book. Write it down, Chuck Core. He did the history of the Major League Players Association. And he was a historian. He's based in St. Louis, actually, and I've known him for a long time, and did a really beautiful book, wonderful book, and because he was able to go into the files with Marvin Miller files and go pull out all the information about what happened during that time when they won their particular war. So that's what happened.
Tell me about the book, though. You got a lot to pack into this story in this book, and what's motivating you to?
we could talk a long time.
Well, no, but what's motivating you to get this story out, and what do you think? What did you think the reaction would be once it was published?
I think for me, there's probably one of the things that I emerged from my brain was. You may have remembered at the university, Columbia University, when the football players were beating up the students. It was maybe 1968, 69, something like that. And my view was, why shouldn't the football players, the pro athletes, why aren't we be involved with the anti-war movement, Vietnam War, because of my 34 guys teammates who basically signed a letter. So to me, it was like, why are the athletes are not involved with the movement? Okay, we call it then the movement. And so I decided what I wanted to do in writing out of their league was to pull myself and professional athletes into the movement, so to speak. That was one of the rationalizations in my brain, thinking, this is what happened to me personally when I was benched. And I'll tell you, when I remembered being benched and given no reason, and I was devastated. It's something that you believe, like every the best player should play, right? And when you see that kind of like that, it's almost like a moral thing, you know, and because athleticism and athletics is about the better player team will win. That's bottom line. That's what it's about. Okay? That's what athletics is. That's what competition is. And when that's fucked with, okay, it's devastating. It's devastating. Because you're putting yourself on the line all the time at that level of an athlete, an elite athlete, you know, that's devastating when you're fucked with.
Yeah, it's dehumanizing.
So I got fucked with, so to speak, and I was so angry. So the other part of the motivation, I was so angry. I'm gonna nail those son of a bitches. I didn't maybe articulate it so well, but I said I'm gonna nail them. I'm gonna nail those son of a bitches. This is wrong. This is fucking wrong. You know. So that was the motivation. And being part of the movement was secondary. But bottom line, I'm just talking to you, it was wrong. And because everything about being an athlete is being pissed on. Okay? It's being pissed on just by somebody else. So that's the bottom line. So the energy to put the book together was coming from there. It was wrong. It's not. It's unfair, and the movement was part of it, and I wanted to be involved because when you saw the guys coming from the body bags coming from Vietnam to U.S., what is going on? What is going on? You see what I'm saying? And back then, I'm 27 years old. Okay, so basically the primary motivation was to really lay it out what is going on, as my view, of course, it personally and sociologically and politically, but the core of it was the beyond unfairness of it, because at that athletes, even when you're a school kid, who's the top kid, the second kid, that kind of thing. But that's human stuff. This is the profound human stuff. Okay, and when it's sullied and compromised, that pissed me off. Bottom line. Okay, I'm ranting. I'm ranting at you now.
I appreciate this.
But I'm just telling you that was the motivation.
What did you expect the response to be? Because
I did not have a clue, or give a shit, or whatever. I just wanted to lay it out. Period.
And what was the reaction?
Oh, the shit hit the fan. This was the first book of a professional athlete, and people say, "Well, I'm comparing it to Jim Bouton's Ball 4." No, very different book. Bouton put a toe in the water. I jumped into the lake. Okay, because I laid it out. Because I knew. I was educated about it, everything from the political, sociological. I did the research, so to speak, and I had a personal stake in the story. Of course, I was the stake. So it really was the first book that happened, and that's why Sports Illustrated nailed the book. I think it's the number 63, the 100 best sports books ever written. And what's that, 15 years ago or 12 years ago, something like that. So and it was not a big deal. What I'm trying to say, I didn't do anything for any reason. I just did it. You know what I mean?
How about though you professionally and personally, in terms of your relationships and your opportunities?
Didn't mean a damn thing to me. The next step. You know what I mean? The next step was I did that. I did all the publicity stuff, and then I did about 125 college lectures around the country. I did a lot of media stuff, and then the paper book. The soft color cover, I did another round, and doing the speeches, I made a little money, and then I went to Colorado with my family, and I lived in the mountains for 3 years, near Durango, Colorado. So that's what I did, because I was finished. I knew I was finished with the football story. So I went to a place called Mayday, Colorado. It's about 15 miles from Durango in the mountains, and La Plata Mountains, and I lived there for 3 years with my family, and then I had to go. I was out of no money, so I had to go to work. So I went back to the Bay Area and started put together construction, and I became a carpenter, and I did that for 2 years or 3 years, 3.5 years in Marin County. And we built 6 houses and Pelican Inn and a bunch of other things. And then I did a 1 year as a football coach at the high school in Marin County, Tamalpais High School, and the media knew about my name. So then the media started coming around, and then finally, Bob Moore, who was a tight end for the Raiders, who I knew him a little bit. He suggested I have a meeting in San Francisco with Ed Garvey, who was the executive director of the NFLPA. And I was there, and I listened to what's happening. I got up, I made a little speech, and then I said, "Here, okay." And I went back, and I sent a letter to Ed, and I said, "You should hire me. Give me 6 months. This is we're in the middle of the war now. Let's jump into it." So, and I was going to just work for 6 months, and which lasted 25 years. So that's the story.
Well, look, it seems to me you would be so uniquely qualified.
But I didn't know
to step into that role.
What I'm saying is, when you asked me these last few questions, I didn't know.
Yeah, there's no plan there.
There's no plan. I just did what I did, and I didn't think about it. Like what would be this or be or that, but I don't know the next step. Do that, and then the next step. Kind of. Do you see what I'm saying? What I've made in my life just to make decisions on that basis, whatever that is. I have no idea the next step, really. I'd like to, think about it. Oh, wow, what is that? I don't know. Do you see what I'm saying? I did. The book was just about me doing the story. It wasn't about anything other than writing the story. When it happened, all right, good. I'm a speaker. Let's go on and I was in part of the movement. So, I was a speaker. I articulated about sport and the movement and anti-war and the war and blah, 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 blah. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I'm sure it was also very inspirational to a lot of people, both inside and outside of the game.
Yeah, I think most people, I was good at what I was doing, but to me it was important to say and articulate what's going on in the fucking world. Basically.
Okay, let's talk about the Players Association, because I have to think that, some part of you is like, football is maybe is not something I want to go back to in any way, shape, or form. But this kind of role could allow for some redemption in some respects, or some.
Those kind of words don't mean anything. Because the struggle for social justice, if you want to use that phrase, I realized I knew what happened. When you're owned, I mean owned, you're a fucking slave. I'm sorry, you are. You don't have choice. Yeah. You get it? No choice. Okay? Slavery is a degree of slavery. Okay? There is degrees of. So when you're trying to open it up to make choice that is fundamental to human consciousness, right? What is democracy about? I mean, where do we want to take this? Do you see what I'm saying? So there was no consequences about it. It was just, this is what we need to do. I need to do. This is what I'm doing. And there were other people doing it as well. Do you see what I'm saying? Bernie Parishers of the world, you name it. It's just, and of course, professional football, and then of course, we put together the union, it was early before me, and then and what we had to do was, the bottom line, and I would say that we've got to free the slaves. This is what's going on, by the way. What the hell do you think we're doing? What does free agency mean? Free agency means you can do that. You have a choice. That's what it means. Okay? And when I probably had 10,000 meetings for 25 years, because I had, my teams. I had, 15 teams or something like 12 teams, So this is what it's all about. And so then you had to go through the struggle. How do you make it work so we can win? It's just like a fucking football game, 2 teams, okay? You got to figure it out, how we're going to win. Okay? And thank God we had this incredible guy, Gene Upshaw, who was a fucking winner, Hall of Famer, and he was a good friend, and he hired me, after Garvey left. And so Gene, and there we had a group of us, former players, Clark Daines, Doug Allen, myself, Gene. You basically the core guys who put together the fucking organization to win the fucking war. I'll be blunt about it. And of course we had to put in the money, and how do we figure it out, and did all that. It was all that stuff. It was a trip, and people don't have any idea what it took. When the owners, Norman Brayman, he said, "What the fuck is going on?" why don't we buy off the players? They put in $25 million. This was 25 years ago. Okay. So what they did was the licensing stuff. We were trying to make some money. They would basically, Bruce Smith, it was a big one. They gave him $250,000 to defect from our NFLPA licensing program. Okay. It went all the way down to guys who were getting $10,000 to defect from our licensing program, which is what we were making our money to run the organization and funding the lawsuits. 12 lawsuits. People don't know this yet. So that's what happened. And Brandon said, why don't we buy off the fucking players? $25 million. Okay? And it would be wonderful to have somebody, a really good journalist like a Chuck Core, to see this history, because it's an amazing story, actually, at one level of the story. I'm not going to do it for sure, but do you see what I'm saying? So this is what was going on. This is what was going on when I was in the middle of the Players Association, our work to do that, because it was all about freeing the free agency, what we call now free agency.
Some level though of satisfaction though.
It was not,
right? Given from where you came from and your. No. You're missing it. You're missing it again. Your level of stuff at a certain level. It was not about satisfaction. Okay. Righting wrongs, equaling the playing field, so to speak.
You have a pie. Okay. And you say to your kids, okay, I'll keep the pie. You don't get any. Or one of the kids, you take it. You don't get it. The other ones don't have any. I'm trying to metaphor it a bit. As opposed to, oh, wow, we need to carve out the pie and make it fair and equitable, and everybody gets a piece. Oh, is that good? Now, if you're a father, you could say, well, am I satisfied? Not really. It's okay. Fine. Yeah, satisfied. Yeah, great. It's just the thing that the right thing to do. So satisfaction, the word doesn't mean for me anyhow. It's just what you need to do. Do you see what I'm saying? So am I satisfied? Yeah, I guess.
No, I get it.
Am I not? If we won, I would be. If we lost, I would be not satisfied. But when we won, fine, okay, satisfied, big deal. What's the next thing? Do you see what I'm saying?
I get it. No, well, look, poor choice of words on my part, but I mean, it was a. You certainly helped improve the situation.
That's what we wanted to do. That's what our job was to do. This is why I did 25 years, not in post facto. Yeah, this is the job. This is what we were doing.
All right, so that leads me to my next and maybe most important question then, and I kind of hinted at it earlier, Dave.
All right.
Okay, here we go. What still has left to be done? Because it seems, through the modern prism of NFL football, professional sports, that college sports, there's still a long way to go on most of these issues.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Well, yeah, we made some good breakthroughs, but when you understand the system of any system, my line is, and I'll say it again, who gets what? My line, I'll say it again, who gets what? So you've got the players and the, quote, the owners or whatever. Okay? Who gets what? So when we were in the middle of the stuff, when I started, the players were getting 30% of the bag of money that the NFL generated, and 70% of the money were going to the owners. Is that right? Is it fair? When we won the war in 1993, this percentages flipped. The players got the 70, and the owners got 30. What happened? Well, market dynamics. Who's better than you? I'll pay you more money, better player than a lesser player. Okay? Now, that is a market system, right? Any market system, right? That's called capitalism. You got it? So, and then of course the kicker is regulation. What is regulation? In 1936, the union movement, National Labor Relations Board, was created because there was war in the streets historically then, okay? And Roosevelt said, look, we've got to put together a regulation system and a dynamic so that workers and owners can deal with and produce agreements that are fair, quote, unquote. Do you see what I'm saying? So the union movement, which I was part of, was in that bailiwick of the National Labor Relations Act in 1936. Okay? So what we're seeing now, for example, with Amazon, and they're trying to organize because they want a union, because the guys working in these sweatshop situations, it's not fair. People need money. They're not educated particularly. So the union movement in this country and in Europe, that has happened. So there's the issues of equity and choice. In our game or in our work, free agency was the goal because there's a hierarchy of the best players to the bottom, who are the, whatever, 36, how many there? 30 quarterbacks. Who are the best? Well, we'll dick around. Well, somebody will pay them. That's the system. So all this stuff, right? So that's really, the bottom line of stuff. And so when winning the war, players had choice and have choice, and they are. And now basically there are probably 5 agreements now since. It's about 50-50 on the money split. The bag of money. I say, it's the bag of money. All right, who gets what? Okay, well, owners got chunk, and the players got chunk. And so basically where we are now with the NFLPA and the NFL owners, it's about a 50-50 split, So, and the guys are, and in that system, players can, as they're doing now, the tag, they'll put the tag on you, franchise tag, so this is part of the system of putting together the system, the players, the 4 years contracts, and then you can be quote free after 4 years, for example. I mean, there's all different aspects of how the system works, but basically people have figured it out over the year. It's a very profitable system for the owners and the players. I mean, what is it? The business now is about 27 billion or something like that. So probably getting close to 30 billion. So this is basically, how what do we want to talk about? So,
okay, well, those are economics.
Well,
so, what about your thoughts about the issue of race, which is still very much an issue?
Of course, it is.
And what about
well,
health and safety?
My view, and I'm not a. I can send you. I'll send you an article I wrote 12 years ago. I'll pull it out. I'm looking at it actually. It's called "Let Players Decide Who Coaches Will Be." First paragraph. The historical pattern of racial practice by NFL owners is again made front pages in the sporting press. Okay, and I'll send it to you if you want. I'm serious. Okay,
absolutely. But it just it speaks to your knowledge of things.
It speaks to the idea of having players having choices, and I say in this, look, the race problem, because from the player's standpoint, who's a better coach for the players? I want to have a good coach. I don't give a fucking brand, breed, whatever. I want a good coach because that's going to extend my career, making myself better as a player. So that's the gist of what this article, and that when I said, let the players decide who coaches will be. Okay? Because there's a ton of, former players who are incredible coaches, but that pattern of racism, when I did most sociology stuff in Canton, Ohio, in the Hall of Fame, was the same shit. So it's coming around 1968 when I did that study. I literally went to Canton for 3 days. And I went through all the photographs of every team. So this is not something new, by the way.
Well, sadly, it's also, some progress has been made on a lot of fronts, but still
what do you mean by, no, you're right. There's progress. Yeah, there was, for a number of years, there was no black, and Doug Williams. And I listened to the show, how the black guy, quarterbacks, Doug opened the door. You see, so the racism question has always been in this country, of course. So when you're looking at different levels of it and permutations and aspects, dimensions of, in sport, professional sport in our country, Yeah, of course there's going to be issues. Because the fucking owners are all white, man. By the way.
Oh, by the way. So, all right, last question then. Tell me about your thoughts on the medical and safety front. Do you worry about players from your generation, the 70s and the 80s, even the 90s, and their health and the effects of playing such a violent game?
Because as I said before, and I started, I rant off into my stuff. I'm sorry. I'm you'll probably have to, you'll probably say this guy.
That's great.
But no, if you're seen as an object, as a black person, you're seen by many people as a object. Do you understand? So when the owners, see players, either black or white, are just objects, we don't have to do anything. There's no big deal. It's just an object. It's a widget. It's an apple. I'll tell you a story. I think Gene and I we had a meeting with the Cowboys, and so we went to Tex Schramm's office, and I knew him, and Gene knew him, of course, and so we're waiting, for the guys to come after practice, and then we're going to do a meeting after practice, and so we're sitting into Tex's office, and Tex is, he's into his cups, as they say. So he's looking at Gene, he's looking at me, he looks at Gene, he says, Gene, I want to say something. Here it is. How it is. Yeah, Tex. What is it? Okay. You players are like the cattle. We are like the ranchers. And we can always get more cattle. Get it? It's like both of us look like well, he nailed it. Tex says, we're the ranchers. You guys are the cattle. We can always get more cattle. Literally, I'm telling you this story. I said, you nailed it. Okay. So if we use the word objects or whatever, other word, just more cattle. We can always, he said, we can always get more cattle.
But that cattle though it's been proving over time, and even more so, that there's some damage there. We talked about humanity or being human before,
but I'm saying, look, when a cow breaks its leg, you shoot him. Okay? As a football player, when you get concussed, get him a new one. Get a new one. Okay?
But what about the health and welfare of that player after that is done, after that career is over?
Well, the whole point of what we've been doing since I was there, and we're doing much more now, and you probably don't know a lot of it, but there's a big chunk of money and effort and organization and money for players who are damaged, have been damaged in the game. And I don't want to get into it, but there's one of the things that we did when we put together the war was to carve out a piece of money for, we call it the benefits, including pensions, but also the medical care for former players. You don't know about this, but there's a big chunk of it there. So, and the league also, as you know, what was it, 7 years ago when we won the big, but the players won that big $1 billion suit, the CTE suit.
Yep.
You know, of course, that was about, you know, pushing the money into players who need it because they're damaged by playing football and their brains and so on. And so there's a whole system now that's available now for the health and welfare of players. And welfare, of course, the pensions and all the money that guys can access now. But it was never there before. There wasn't, it was historical over time. It was more and more coming into players and the money to deal with these issues. And so they're on it. They're definitely on it. You know, the union's on it, the NFL's on it, and all the rest of it, because they realize now they could get their asses sued. So for being complicit with it, and that's why they were able to win the quote settlement, the $1 billion settlement.
Man, what an interesting guy, and an interesting story for sure. All right, before we go any further, you must stop what you're doing and get a copy of this book. It is one of the all-time great sports books. It's on every list that's ever published out there. And again, a groundbreaking book in its time, 1970 when it was published, and still very much so today. The book, again, is called Out of Their League. Was reissued by our pals at the University of Nebraska Press under their Bison Books imprint, I think in 2007 or so. It is absolutely available in various forms, wherever you can find good books. But of course, if you'd like to give us a couple of shekels of referral love by doing so, please, by all means, just buy the book through our website at goodseatsstillavailable.com. Just search up this episode number 253 with Dave Meggyesy, and you'll find a convenient link to it. And we appreciate that to no end. I'm sure Dave will too. A couple of shekels coming his way too. I think it's all good for all concerned, don't you think? A great story, fascinating. Do yourself a favor, check out the YouTube clip. I think it's about a good 18, 20 minutes long from August 3rd, 1970 of the Dick Cavett Show, where you'll see the entire interview of Dave with Dick Cavett. And yes, again, Janis Joplin and Gloria Swanson are guests on that. You'll hear and see them chiming in as Dave and Dick go at it in conversation. It's a fascinating clip, well worth seeking as well. What else? Not only our thanks to Dave, but our thanks to our pal Jerry Payne, of course, who painstakingly puts all of our pieces together editorially and with his wizardry and knob turning. We appreciate that very much. And we also appreciate you following us in various social media places. We're on Facebook. You'll find us on Instagram at Good Seats Still Available. And you'll find us on Twitter at Good Seats Still. You can send us email at hello@goodseatsstillavailable.com. By all means, do that. And also, while you're on the website at goodseatsstillavailable.com, you can find a little link there to subscribe to our weekly email newsletter, which is really more of a tip-off as to what the episode of the coming days is going to be. And all I just need is your name and your email address, and that's it. And you'll be in the know. Thanks once again for listening. We appreciate it and hope you enjoyed it. I sure did. And until next week, take care, everybody. Please stay safe and sane. Bye-bye.